Gathering Grounds Gaming, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to build this ruined factory. So the reason why I'm doing this is a little bit different to my last few videos, but I play a lot of bolt action, Konflict 47, and I also play some Warhammer with my son. So I wanted to sort of show you how to make more of a modern or sci-fi sort of based terrain, you know, alongside something like the Dungeons and Dragons and Age of Sigmar stuff that I normally build. But I just thought it'd be really nice to show you using some of the same techniques as I've been using, but just a more modern sci-fi piece. So first of all, I just want to say thanks for coming across and watching the video today. And if this is the type of content that you like, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel and like the video if you do like the content. Also just wanted to sort of highlight just a couple of other ways you can support me, as say if you do like this type of content, you like what I'm doing here. Down in the description you've got the link to my Patreon. So basically for a couple of pounds a month, and it just like enables me to sort of spend more time doing these types of videos, but it also gives you access to early videos, behind the scenes, but and also a Discord channel. Another way you can support me is there's a link to my Etsy shop. So I sell a lot of the products that I'm building now. I also sell some sort of past projects, but I also sell some staple products like things like singular trees. That's quite a big sort of popular one for people doing wargaming. And I do lots of accessories. Most of them have sort of been hand sculpted by myself. As I say, there's a couple of different ways you can support me, but otherwise just by coming across and watching this video is really helpful. So thank you so much. So what I'm going to do, as normal, I'm going to jump down on the pad. I'm going to do a little sketch to sort of show you what I'm sort of looking at creating, and then we can start cutting the foam and we'll get sculpting. Okay, so I'm going to call this the factory ruin. So the points I really want to make sure I include in this piece are, I want there to be a loading bay with like some type of shutter. I want it to be a multi-level piece. I'm really enjoying the multi-level pieces, and I thought it'd be nice to do a bit of sci-fi or modern ruins with multi-levels. And I want there to be some sort of sci-fi or modern details. So, you know, I've got some really nice sort of resin sort of details like barrels, pallets, you know, switches, conduit. So I want to try and include some of that in the piece. When you look through the piece, I want there to be like a big sort of shutter, which is sort of like half open. And if we do it from the front, so you got like the shutter here, and you got like the loading bay at the front. Then you've got the steps that go down here, and it sort of goes in, and there to be like it to sort of this bit to sort of step down onto the floor. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the 20mm foam on my Proxon just to the shape of the back step of the factory, just so I've actually then can mount the actual structure up against it. So once I've got that, I'm going to then start just putting the basic walls together before I've cut anything in, just to make sure that it all fits together. And then I'm going to start, the first thing I'm going to do is start marking out the windows. As in the drawing, I want there to be some nice large industrial windows, and they'll put some sort of glass in those and a little frame on those later on. And here I'm just cutting the piece at the end for the shutter, so like for the loading bay of the factory. Just sort of test fitting it as I go. I'm just cutting out the windows. And I'm going to ruin one of these on one side, so I'll actually break the wall away just to sort of give the ruined effect. But I'll still put some glass in it so you can just sort of see it's sort of broken away. And there you go. So as I've now sort of cut it all in, and I've put some just some sort of smaller windows at the top just for the upper level. And there you go. I've sort of glued that to the base. And I'm going to stick almost like a little catwalk just above. It looks like it's sort of broken away, sort of goes around the side of the building. And for the glass, I'm actually going to use sort of clip frame plastic. It's thick enough that it creates a nice sort of glass, but it's not too thick that it's hard to cut. So I can just cut it with a Stanley knife. Just going to test fit it in there, and I want it to be snug, so I don't have to glue it too much in, but not too tight that it snaps, of course. I'm just going to create the struts to create the window frame. This is literally like 5mm square sort of sticks of wood, sort of balsa wood, and I'm just going to do one long one down the middle, and to divide it up into sort of 6 panes of glass. So it was relatively, did it on with a razor saw, but you can use a knife to cut it. Now I want to put some railings in, almost like a viewing platform to sort of, like someone would look over into what's going on below. I'm literally just going to use some styrofoam plastic rod with some little bits of dowel. I'm just going to sort of size fit it against a bolt action figure, which is probably where I'm going to be using this mostly, Konflict 47 or bolt action. And I've just created some bars that have sort of just broken down to make it look like half the building sort of been blown away. Now I'm just going to pop the glass in. This is it afterwards. I've literally just put some hot glue around the edges just to hold it in, but that's going to be nicely covered up when I paint it and texture it later, so you won't see any of the actual hot glue. So now I'm going to start having a little look at the shutter. So never really done this before, but I'm going to try it using sort of corrugated card. So I'm just going to cut a big sheet. I bought a big roll of this. It's meant to be for packing, but I'm just going to tightly roll it. I'm going to cut it just wider than the actual shutter, and I'm just going to hot glue and roll this up, and then cut it off. And then I'm going to sort of stick it on, but then I'm going to put 2 little bits of wood at the end just to create the ends of the shutter, and then I'm going to sort of frame it all. There you go. I'm going to then just sort of box the shutter off. Just going to use some plaster card to box that off. Just put some steps in, just using some styrofoam. So you can cut these, it's as unneat as possible because it looks like industrial steps. I'm going to get some more of this sort of steel barring to create like a joist that sits underneath the platform, just to sort of give it more of an industrial look and make it look like there's some structural bits in there. And I'm going to start now looking just in general some of the details. So I've got things like little barrels that I can add in. They look really good when you stack them together. I've got some switches and some sort of conduit and pipes, and this is just to give it an industrial look. It's always good to have a little box of just lots of oddments that you can use to create things. It's going to gather some of these up. There's some vents. I've got some switches and things like that. I think it'll be good. So yeah, you can put the barrel. You can glue some barrels in. I think I'm going to put some at the back, but I'm going to add them in a bit later. So I've added like a little TV monitor at the bottom, some conduit, and some steel barring around to go around the shutter. So it just gives it a little bit more of an industrial look, and that big pipe. So now I'm at that point where I've done all the structure. I'm just going to add some, basically this is just filler with paint. And I've been a bit naughty. I've actually added in a 3D printed crater just for timing. I've glued that in on top, and I will sort of, going to sort of cover that in PVA and then sort of put some sand on it just to blend it into the board itself. And then when I come to dry brush it later, it will create some nice texture. And then literally I'll blend that into the board later. And now I'm literally just painting the whole piece. I'm priming it in brown for the base and then black for the stonework. And this is where I can sort of blend the crater into the actual board itself. And then I can sort of dry brush it out later. And this is like it's when it's been primed. And that'll just sit until it's completely dry. And then I'm going to sort of dry brush. So I just use 3 different browns, like a dark, a mid, and a light brown, just to make the actual texture of the crater just pop out. It's not difficult. Just pick the browns you want to use and then just dry brush them in. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know about sort of like the dry brushing technique I use. And now I'm just going to dry brush on like a light grey over the black. It's not going to be grey, this building, but this just gives it a base colour for when I sort of then add the colour in later. But you'll see what I mean when you see it. But literally just with a nice big brush, just give it a nice coating just to lighten out all of the black into like a light grey. There you go. You could leave it this colour if you wanted to, but I'm actually going to do a couple more techniques just to give it a bit of a different colour. But actually it already looks pretty good. You can see some of the details starting to pop out now. So now I want to add some rubble. So I'm going to do some rubble piles around the edges of the building. So I'm going to use some DAS clay. You can use filler, but fillers are very heavy. So you get the DAS clay, you roll it into like a sausage, and you basically just wrap it round and place it where you want it to go, and then get some water and start molding it into the actual model. So literally just really press it down. You want to try and create some little sort of like mounds where you want the rubble to go. And I'll explain why I used DAS in a moment. But so I've done this here. So I've done 2 piles. I'm just smoothing them out and getting them so they're at a nice little slope, ready to put the rubble on. So I've got my bits that I want to create their old pile. So I've got like little bits of steel, and you can use anything, but if you're doing sci-fi, it's good to try and find some sci-fi sort of looking bits of rubble so it sort of blends in. So I've got things like oil cans. I've got a mold where I can actually mold some like tires and wheels. So I'm going to have some of those. I've made a little pallet. So I've got lots of different bits. I've got some corrugated iron. And I've got some of that T-bar, that H-bar again that I used a minute ago. And then what you do is you press the items into the DAS clay. And that's what helps it sort of pile up. So just give it a really good press in so they really make a nice indentation in the clay. And do the same on both sides. Try to get, naturally where you think, look up piles of rubble. There's lots of pictures online. Just sort of see what would normally go on top, like, flinging bits of like corrugated iron over the top. And what you want to do is now you want to start picking them out and actually in the indentation put some PVA and then place the items back in. And this will create like a really nice hold over time. Make sure that, with the things like the corrugated iron and stuff, you get a nice layer because there's not really a lot for them to stick in with. And make sure there's anything that you think they'll contact in the pile. Just lots of PVA. You can't put too much on. And then press them back in. And this is, so I've made my piles here. So I've got a couple of bits on each side. And it creates some nice line of sight blocking terrain. So you can see here the bolt action figure sits quite nicely behind it. So it creates a bit of soft cover, a bit of hard cover, depending on what game you're playing. And now what you want to do is cover the rest of the pile where the clay is, cover the rest of it in PVA, and we're going to scatter on. So we're going to scatter on. This is cactus grit. So it's sort of small stones, but when it's all sprayed, it's going to look like rubble. And because I've painted this model now, I can actually come in with a rattle can and just spray it black. This is what I said earlier. So I'm out now sort of like sponging on like a light blue, like an industrial style blue. And I'm going to go over the whole model in this just to create, like this is the colour that maybe the building used to be before it sort of like got really grimy and dirty. And sponging it on because you don't want a solid blue. And there you go. So I've done the whole model. And I will go over this with like a brown wash. And I've done the shutter. I've basically sponged on a bit of cream onto the shutter. Again, it looks really murky, and I will cover that with a brown wash, and you'll hardly be able to tell it was cream. And so I've put the yellow on now for the little, like, I can't think what they're called. It's like a warning for the loading bay. And I free-handed put some black lines in. You can use masking tape, but I wanted to do it with a bit more speed than putting masking tape down. So I just sort of free-handed it, and I think it turned out all right, actually. And this is just a brown wash. I'm going to put this literally over everything. All of the walkways, all of the paint, even the little the yellow and black lines I've just painted in. I'm going to cover that all up. It doesn't matter if it looks really brown, it will sort of soak in, but you just want to get that completely covered up. It doesn't matter if it's uneven as well, because it just adds to the sort of dirty look. And while that's drying, I'm literally going to dry brush in on the railings that I put in. I'm going to dry brush like a green, this Warpstone green. And now for the rust. So with the rust, I'm going to use 3 different things. So I'm going to use, this is Typhus Corrosion. So it's a technical paint. And what it does is you paint it on where you want there to look like there's rust. And it's got like a sandy grit inside the paint. So I'm going to put it on the shutter. I'm going to put it on some of the rubble. And what it does is it blisters when it dries. So it looks like the sort of brown parts of rust, sort of the flaky sort of brown bit. I'm going to go around all the model, just picking up bits, and this will give it some nice detail and a bit of sort of little areas that are going to pop out. I want to get it quite a lot on that shutter, just to make that shutter look really like rusty and old, like the shutter's got stuck open. And just while that dries, I'm going to pick out some like the colours. So I want a couple of colours on there to make it pop out. So the barrel's going to be red, and I think I'm going to do the other ones in blue, just to give it a couple of colours. Yeah, so I'm going to do the other one in blue on the other side of on the other rubble pile. So this is the second stage of the rust. So this is a dry brush orange. So what you do is you get a dry brush and you literally just dry brush a little bit of orange over the Typhus Corrosion, and you can see it just picks out the high points. And it looks like rust. It looks really good. I love this technique. I've used it in a few different places. So I've picked out like the corrugated iron. I've picked out the H bar, and it looks really good on the shutter when the shutter's done. There you go. And I've put it on the switch as well. And I just want to make these a little bit more orange, so I'm going to go over them for a second time once it's dried. There you go, and I've added in the third colour is Necron Compound. So this is that picks it back out some of the metal colour on the areas that I don't want to be rusty. So I've done that on the corrugated iron and a little bit on the shutter. And now it's time for some of the details. So that little palette I made, I'm going to add one of those in. I've put the little gas canisters in there at the back with some of the blue barrels. I've added like a little steel bar there, which I'll blend in. little bits of sheet metal just standing up, and another barrel there. So it's good to add little details if you've got them. It just gives the piece a bit of interest when you're playing on the piece, rather than just being a building. So now we're going to look at the base readies and the flocks. So for the base readies, I'm going to actually use 4 different base readies. So the first one is going to be, you've got Battle Zone Scatter by Jarvis, and then you've got Arid Earth. So this is by Geek Gaming. And then you can see the difference. So the Geek Gaming one is quite fine, and the Battle Zone Scatter is thicker. And this is Chip Slate. And then the last one is also a Geek Gaming one, which is Forest Path, which is the same as Arid Earth, but it's got lots of little bits of turf in it. So this will give you a nice look. And then on top of that, I'm going to scatter some blended turf, which is going to create some weeds. So something I'm thinking about using is this bramble bushes. So I'm thinking about adding a couple of these in just to show some sort of growth, but we'll look at that after. So what I've done is I've covered it in PVA, and I'm literally starting with the Arid Earth, and then I'm putting over the top some Battle Zone Scatter. So the Arid Earth gives a nice base for the actual base ready, and then the Battle Zone Scatter is the bigger pieces of stone, and that helps us sort of blend all the pieces together. So you can see I'm just sort of sprinkling it around all like the all of the rubble piles around the crater, and this will just help blend it all in, so it all just looks like one big piece. You can literally get it all on the edges. Make sure you capture all of the edges of the piece, otherwise you're going to end up with little blank bits where there's no scatter at all. And just come back in, and you could just play around with this. There's no real system to it, but this is it after the first pass. And I'm going to just put some stones in around like inside the factory, obviously just where the rubbles and that's fallen. And then I've done all that, and I've done it up on the top level. So I've done all your Battle Zone Scatter, and I've put it all around all of like the little bits of detail just to blend them in. So I've put it around the palette, so it looks like the palette's been there a while. It just adds to the effect as well. And this is it after adding some of the blend scatter. So it creates sort of like the look of like weeds where people don't really walk. So it's sort of like just around the edges, just where they'd naturally grow. I've done a few inside as well. And this is the bramble. So I'm thinking about putting a couple up against like the windows, just to sort of cover up some of the windows a bit. So naturally that's where they'd grow. And I've sort of just stuck them in with a bit of super glue. And now I'm going to lock it all in place. So this is isopropanol in the blue bottle, and it's matte sealant in the other one. I'm going to use a syringe to put it all on. And basically the matte sealant is just PVA, matte varnish and water. And the isopropanol basically breaks the surface tension to allow all the matte sealant to soak down to the bottom, so it locks it all in place. Just really soak it. And now I'm just adding a few little cables, the last little finishing touches, just to one to the monitor and one to the little switch outside. It's all about the little details that you can add in at the end. You can go crazy with the details. You can keep adding detail after detail to make it more and more realistic. And this is the finished piece. So I've put some Konflict 47 and bolt action units on there just to show you for scale. I think it looks really good. You can use it for like your World War, or you can use it for 40k or Konflict. I just think it creates a nice look, quite dingy, quite grimdark. hope you enjoyed that video today. I really enjoyed doing something just a little bit different. I really enjoyed sort of doing like sculpting like the rubble piles, something I've not done on a piece, normally just done sort of like individually. I've really enjoyed sort of playing with things like some of the more modern sort of painting, never done sort of like corrugated sort of shutters and stuff like that, and actually creating some of the little small details. I really enjoyed some of those pieces. As I say, I'd love to hear in the comments about what you specifically liked about this video, if you did, and if you did enjoy this video, as I say, click the link below, subscribe to the channel, but also hop across, and if you like sort of some of the sci-fi builds, I've got a really good sort of 3-part kill team board build as well. So as I say, thanks very much for sort of staying along for the build. Thanks for coming across to the channel. Until the next time, I look forward to seeing you.